trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee of Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking that one. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
This is not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, we are back with another episode of Politics. Wow. Is that that's a hole in my shirt. You never realize how dirty your clothes are until you get in front of a camera with lights on you. I always watch these after the fact and go, oh, look at all those specks on your shirt or on the hat or on your background. There's always something messing it up. But it has been a crazy week for politics. And before I go too far today, I want to just make absolutely sure we're firing all cylinders. Senators. We're firing all senators. We're firing on all cylinders. Firing on all cylinders. Because every once in a while, I'll do this and my mic will tweak out. But thankfully, you guys in the comments usually set me straight if it sounds shitty. So please, if it sounds shitty or it's bouncing, or let me know. But it looks like everything is on track. So it has been yet another crazy week in American politics and world politics at this point. And I titled this week's episode in honor of Lindsey Graham, Death of a Salesman, because Lindsey Graham was quite the war salesman. That's what he did throughout his career. And people are saying, what a loss of such a lovely man. I'm kidding, of course. But we now have two very important seats in Congress open. Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. Two Republican seats. And you can kind of see the desperation of the donor class starting to percolate. McConnell's, they're trying to pretend that he's fine as long as possible and hold on to prevent someone like Thomas Massie from taking that seat in a special election. Can you imagine how fantastic it would be if Thomas Massie gets McConnell's seat after they spent how many $1 million, how many $100 million? I don't think it was quite $1 billion, but they spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Obviously not enough weed yet today. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars to unseat Thomas Massie. So it would be just this act of God, brilliance type situation if McConnell's dead and Massie's able to get that seat from McConnell. What a karmic retribution that would be to the Zionist crowd who, made sure that that Ed Galrain guy ended up taking Massie's seat. Or he hasn't even taken the seat yet. He still has to win the election. But he took Massie's slot on the ballot as a Republican. So the desperation's palpable, and I really just wanted to say palpable because that's a word I don't get to use a lot. But it reminded me of what's happening in industries like music and television, kind of. And for the longest time, there was this elite gatekeeping mechanism that effectively kept out anyone that the editors of the New York Times, for example, didn't want in the game, right? And I use MIT as an example, but you could replace that with Washington Post or The Atlantic or CBS News or NBC News or whatever. These organizations always colluded to keep out the unacceptables, or what did Hillary Clinton call the deplorables? The unwashed working class. And that's why Donald Trump was such a massive blow to these people, and why they fought so hard to keep him from getting into the presidency and then getting back into it. Even though he's part of that class, for the most part, they told us he was unacceptable. And so he still won despite them telling us that. And now you can debate the legacy of Donald Trump and what he's going to leave behind in his wake, because it's not looking good right now. That's for sure. But what I'm talking about is Trump getting elected despite the gatekeepers. I'm not making a commentary on how, valid it was to get him elected around those gatekeepers. It was pretty clear that they didn't want him to be the president, based on just look at the history. You're a Nazi. If you say everyone's a Nazi who supported Trump, they did all kinds of, I don't have to go through it all. You know what I'm talking about. And I see this now with McConnell and Graham. It feels like in electoral politics, like I said, the gatekeepers' desperation is on full display. And, we might be reaching a point where these gatekeepers don't have control anymore. And they can throw all the money they want at their problems, but the money isn't going to solve it. And the people can communicate now, regardless of how much you censor us. There's always going to be ways around it. There's always going to be, black people have proven this with hip hop language. It's like, once you start saying this, or you need to get around saying a certain word, you replace it with something clever. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the crux of hip hop culture. All kinds of great words have come from hip hop culture, trying to dodge saying certain things. So you're never going to stop the backlash, or you're never going to stop the toothpaste is out of the tube, so to speak, with the gatekeepers in any industry, whether it's music, whether it's politics. And obviously politics is an industry, but I'm making this analogy just, you get what I'm saying with the gatekeeper thing. And maybe I'm just a wide-eyed optimist, but I do think that things are changing. And I have some stories today for you to back up this assessment. So let us get into them now. Today's top story, the death of a salesman. A salesman, of course, as I said earlier, of foreign wars. That was definitely Lindsey Graham's bag, wasn't it? And his death, okay, it's very suspicious, but let's talk about it. Last night, it was announced that Lindsey Graham, beloved senator from South Carolina, suddenly got sick and died. Absolutely nothing suspicious about this whatsoever. He was just in Ukraine the day before, telling Zelensky he was going to have another $90 billion to him or whatever. But I thought a good place to start with anything like this is with the mainstream media take on it, just so we know where the public.
Who cares what an irrelevant, lamestream media is going to say about you?
Yeah, Lindsey Graham, Sarah. Lindsey Graham doesn't have to care now because he's no longer with us. But let's watch just a little bit of this CNN breaking news report on Senator Lindsey Graham here.
Longtime Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has passed away. His office says he died on Saturday night after what they call a brief and sudden illness. The statement says Graham's family is asking for privacy at this time. He represented the state of South Carolina in the U.S. Congress since.
Okay. Well, I didn't catch the part about Graham's family asking for privacy the first time I watched this clip, but that makes sense. I guess that's the excuse they can use to kind of like dance around the cause of death, because it's definitely a little suspicious. And I thought this was funny when I went to look up, not funny necessarily, but anyway, let me let you finish this.
It's 1995. Let's bring in CNN's Alex Michelson, anchor of The Story Is. Alex, you are on the West Coast there. How are you processing this news that has just come in, the shocking death of a senator who had just been in Ukraine and had just met with the Ukrainian president, and now we're learning he has died?
Yeah, I mean, just posted a bunch of statements onto X yesterday in his official capacity. Pictures and images of him working over the last few weeks are out there. So this coming out of nowhere, that Lindsey Graham, one of the most important and influential voices in the United States Senate for many years.
Oh my God.
Somebody who has been one of the biggest
sucks
champions of
to
more
hear
United
that, but it's actually true. One of the most important and influential voices in the Senate of the last 30 years. That is unfortunately, disgustingly true. But let's go a little further into
States military intervention. Somebody who has championed the idea of military intervention in Iran for many years. Somebody who's championed the United States relationship with Israel very closely for many years.
That's an understatement.
And now, all of a sudden, there's been so much conversation about Mitch McConnell's medical reality right now. Nobody would have thought this would come now. It's been.
I bet Soros and the Democrats are behind this.
Lament for my cock, sore and crucified.
All right. Well, I thought this was interesting, and I think you will appreciate this. One of the things that I happened to come across in my travels, researching the passing of beloved Senator Lindsey Graham here, is that Google has already marked him as former United States Senator. Man, they are quick on this stuff. You got to give Google credit. I mean, it is not hard to update the internet, but that's one of the reasons I rely a little bit on print media, because digital media is way too easy to alter on the fly. But here you have it. Overview. Lindsey Olin Graham was an American politician and attorney who represented South Carolina in the United States Senate from 2003 until his death in 2026. July 9th, 1955. Now, there is a lot to process here. But I will say this. When everyone's favorite senator here, Valentina Gomez, pointed out the suspicious nature of Lindsey Graham's demise here, I blamed it on Hamas like a good soldier. That's how you do it right here. Lindsey Graham was in Disney in March and now he's suddenly dead. Never married, no children, at Disney with a bubble wand. Something doesn't add up. Now, this is a ridiculous tweet to begin with, because what does any of this have to do with anything? He's never married, no children. He was at Disney with a bubble wand and now he's dead. There's a lot more current information to go on, starting with the fact that he was just in Ukraine, which Russia is bombing the shit out of. There is that. But, I don't even like Lindsey Graham. But again, this is just insanely suspicious. And it makes me wonder, what is there a investigation into this going on? I would expect there to be some kind of investigation when, as this guy said, a guy who holds a lot of political power just suddenly dies out of nowhere. He seemed pretty healthy last time. We're going to get into this, but the problem is, to be honest, most people don't care that he's gone. That's the big problem. It's like most people are like, oh, good riddance. You know what I mean? And can you blame them? Again, it's like, what? Look at the guy's legacy. We're going to in just a second here. But he was a partisan robot. He was very pro-war and violence, someone who never had to personally get his hands actually dirty. And once let's show this here, because once Trump got elected, here it is. President Trump always stood with Lindsey Graham, even when it was somewhat unpopular to do so within his own base. It was not because they always agreed. It was that DJT liked that you could work with him. Yes. Once Trump got elected, he could work with him. Because what's he going to do? Go caucus with the Democrats instead? I mean, it's kind of like out of necessity when you really think about it, that Lindsey Graham came around to Trump. All the Republicans had to. eventually once he won power. And it's like, this is the thing that pisses me off the most about the Democrats, which we're going to really go at in a little while. But you saw a similar dynamic with Bernie Sanders. Like, you're trying to kind of like take over the status quo of an entrenched party that doesn't want you coming in. And Trump and his people kind of had the balls to do it, despite, I mean, man, what a slog it was, you know. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying that he was the hero that the MAGA people thought he was going to be either, because he clearly wasn't. And most of them are wise to that now. But again, I don't fault anyone for voting for him, because I think it was out of desperation. And my point is, had Bernie Sanders, you know, been fully committed to the idea of winning in the Democratic Party, he would have had to do the same thing and turn these people like Trump turned Lindsey Graham to his side by winning power. That's how you turn they're going to smear and attack you until you actually win the election. And then suddenly Hillary Clinton's staffers and campaign acolytes and everybody are on your side, Bernie, when you do that. But Bernie doesn't have the gumption to do that. So let's look at, you know, the history of Lindsey Graham and who he is and what he originally stood for. Because I want to take a trip down memory lane here and use my favorite sound effect, one of my favorite sound effects that I like to use quite a bit. Where is my favorite sound effect? That's not it.
Don't tase me, bro.
That's one of them. No, this is actually it. Let's go back and look at where Lindsey Graham stood. We're gonna take a trip. Okay, here we go. Let me say this one more time. We take a trip down memory lane and go back and look at where Lindsey Graham stood before Trump was elected. Before the 2016, and this is from Grok, who, let's be honest, you know, before you throw tomatoes at me for using Grok, just pulls its information from Google or whatever search engine. Before the 2016 election, Lindsey Graham was one of Donald Trump's sharpest Republican critics during the primaries. Notable examples: December 2015 on CNN, called Trump a race-baiting, xenophobic religious bigot who doesn't represent my party. July 2015 said Trump was selling fear and prejudice and the GOP shouldn't hire him as a candidate. May 2016 tweet, if we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed and we will deserve it. Graham later became one of Trump's strongest Senate allies. And again, as I said before, this is how power works, especially political power, and Trump, to his credit, understood that. And you see him, you know, Trump will go out and say he's literally called Mamdani every name in the book, and Mamdani has called him a fascist. And then they had that meeting at the White House, and it was very amiable, and they clearly liked each other and got along very well because they're both suave, debonair, you know, New York guys. But Trump, I think one of the reasons he was such a shoo-in for this job is he gets the WWE nature of public politics and the fact that, you know, Lindsey Graham, I guarantee you every establishment Democrat will be at Lindsey Graham's funeral along with the Republicans, because it's, as we know, it's one big club. But of course, Graham got on board with the Trump train once he had to. Once that became Trump's only option, he became one of Trump's strongest allies. And here's a reminder of what a loving and caring and sensible individual that Lindsey Graham was in his life here on Earth. Okay, hold on a second. It's telling me my browser lost connection, but let me try this again. Just want to make sure you guys can see this because it's important. I'm not going to discount it if it tells me my browser lost connection. So this is a tweet from Dr. Simon Godek. 2022, somebody in Russia should take Putin out. 2023, Russians are dying. Best money we ever spent. 2023, Gaza should be flattened. 2024, this is Hiroshima and Nagasaki on steroids. Here's a little bit of a, we'll play some of this. This is fair use press reel of what a great person. God damn it. Lindsey Graham is. I just hit the button and messed it all up. There you go. Yeah, dropping bombs on Nagasaki. Oh my God! So that's just an example of what a great person Lindsey Graham.
Beautiful, man.
And he will be missed. He will be dearly missed as a person and a senator. But let's finish this up with a note from one of my favorite Twitter accounts, Johnny Graz here. He says, despite Anna Escobar's comment here, she says, after Charlie died, I tweeted something flippant. I regret that to this day. So this, I'll say nothing. But, you know, Charlie's a little bit different because that was clearly, you know, Charlie didn't really have a long, like, public history of being a warmongering pig boy like Lindsey Graham does. And he was also a media personality, not a politician. Like Charlie's you know, power was largely in rallying people to vote, where Lindsey Graham is a guy who actually makes policy decisions that kill people. The guy's got a lot of blood on his hands. So to some here, Johnny Graz says it's important we absolutely fry Lindsey Graham today. His accomplices need to see how they'll be remembered. To which I say Johnny deserves the And we're going to end this with some noteworthy breaking news, and that is that Grindr flags at Grindr headquarters have apparently been lowered to half staff in honor of the passing of one of their biggest customers. I think we know who that is. I'm not going to allegedly. Biggest customers allegedly. This is clearly a joke, but you know, don't stop with your lawsuit filings. It's called satire, called humor. Give me 1 second. I need to take a quick break, and then we will be back to talk about the next dead senator, Mitch McConnell. Be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with episode 150 today of the Politics Show. I want to thank you guys, all of you, each and every one of my subscribers, my 750 subscribers, hard-fought fucking subscribers, I have to say. And I got to stop with the cussing. Someone in the comments the other day, before we get into Mitch McConnell here, someone in the comments the other day said, you know, your commentary's decent, but you cuss too much. And I really took that to heart because to me, that's constructive criticism. That's like, hey, like you kind of making some good points here, but you're kind of sloppy with your language a little bit. And I like that, you know, and I've honestly been thinking that as I edit my videos together, I see how my speech impediment stuff, I see that I go before I say shit all the time. And I see that I cuss a lot. But that's just how what happens is when you start to do this, and you have to really put your own speaking and actions under a microscope, you start to notice these kind of little quirks and ticks and inconsistencies that you have when you speak. So give me time. I will improve. Kaizen, baby. Constant and never-ending improvement, bit by bit, every day. So anyway, everyone's favorite turtle, Mitch McConnell, has been having a lot of issues lately. There was one instance recently where he totally locked up and they had to drag him off stage. I don't know if you saw that, but it was like it was a moment. I'm sure you've seen it. And this whole thing already reminds me a lot of Dianne Feinstein in the Democratic Party, where they wheel these people in and have their staffers vote on their behalf. And it's really kind of a sad picture of what America has degenerated to. Ancient, out of touch boomers made wealthy by corruption of their political power, clinging to their seats until their last breath. That was poetic, wasn't it? So here's the breaking news on Mitch, just in case, just a recap for those who might not have already seen the story. New footage reportedly shows Senator Mitch McConnell being loaded onto a stretcher and taken to an ambulance after collapsing. EMS audio reportedly references an unconscious patient in cardiac arrest with CPR in progress, according to CNN. Now, this is from July 10th, so a couple days ago. I covered this tweet in a recent episode, but someone recently tweeted, the flock cameras. We need to take all those down in the streets and put them in DC so the people can monitor the public servants, not the other way around. Like, politicians shouldn't be monitoring the people with flock cameras. The people should be monitoring our public servants who we pay. We pay their salary, and I've said this before, we should treat these people like corporations treat their base level employees. They should be on the same healthcare. They should be on the same kind of pay structure, the same surveillance. Like, their computers should be monitored. I think originally they largely were, but the Congress obviously has the power to kind of write themselves out of laws. But the story here is that Mitch was rushed to the hospital, and that's where the story basically ends. Unless you're curious, he's totally fine in the hospital. But let's go to Glenn Greenwald here, who I think has
you don't know, Mitch
kind of a good recap for us.
He is not running for re-election in
the entire situation.
He is not running for re-election in Kentucky. So I guess there's an open Senate seat in Kentucky this year, I believe. I'll check that, but he's not running for re-election. A royal family, like they're royalty, that they don't have any obligation.
One more time. I flubbed it up.
I guess there's an open Senate seat in Kentucky this year, I believe. I'll check that, but he's not running for re-election. And he has been in obviously declining health for quite some time. Even when he was still the majority leader, just like 18 months ago, he had these press conferences where he would just like zone out. Just not just forget what he was talking about, but like just kind of staring into the distant space with his mouth open, a totally blank look. People asking him questions. Like nothing's registering, just like a brain stoppage, like a cerebral halt. And it happened a few times. Then he fell, fainted.
I'm like, man, that must be some killer weed or killer Alzheimer's that Mitch has there.
Clearly aging and rapidly so in a way that's affecting his cognitive abilities and everything else. But again, the Senate is a nursing home, so we even stayed as Senate minority leader for a while. They finally, mercifully switched him out. But he's still a senator from Kentucky, still voting, still on with major seniority on committees, just like Dianne Feinstein. And then suddenly, like around 3 weeks ago or more, he just kind of disappeared. And then there were reports that he was in the hospital, very sick. Reports that he had a heart attack. People very close to the Trump White House, like Laura Loomer and others, started saying he was brain dead. But then people like Scott Jennings, who's very close to Mitch McConnell, went on CNN or online and claimed he had talked to Mitch McConnell that morning. And he was like super, active and robust mentally. He talked about the Iran war, talked about Graham Platner, had like a major, serious, in-depth conversation about politics. He's super.
Scott Jennings, by the way, the guy from CNN, he is, if you don't know this, on the payroll of that media company owned by Brad Parscale, the former Trump web guy. Literally a registered Ford agent. What's it called? Like Clock Tower Media or something like that. Or I forget the name of it, but whatever the case, Scott Jennings works for our greatest ally.
Super sharp, just a few health issues, but there's no update from the hospital and there's no update from the McConnell family at all. They just like, we're not giving you anything. We're not telling you anything. He could be dead. He could be in a coma. He could be brain dead. He could be have a heart attack and recovering. Who knows? The reason we don't know is because he refuses to say. The family refuses to say. The hospital would say, but they're obviously unauthorized to say. The hospital can only give information if the patient consents. And so you have this very powerful politician exercising public power who's clearly ill, with speculation that he's incapacitated. And they just are so unconcerned about their obligations to the public that they just won't say. We just saw that with the Republican Congressman Tom Kaine in New Jersey, who just, literally disappeared, just vanished. No one knew where he was for months. And he's a member of the House, and the Republicans have a very narrow majority in the House, so that obviously reduced it. But also, he's running for re-election. He just vanished. He's still running for re-election. His name's on the ballot, getting endorsements, getting financing, money being spent, but he was gone. And they refused to give any information. They said he's treating a medical issue, and I'll be back.
How long do you think it is before all of the candidates in Congress are just people wearing skin masks? Just those CIA skin masks. It's all elderly, like Diane Fide. Mitch McConnell is going to live forever as a guy in a skin mask. Like Kiss can go out and do makeup shows and never age. Brilliant strategy, deep state. Well, you get the idea. Mitch McConnell and these other senators are not around. They're mysteriously absent, but there's no accountability as to where they are or what they're doing because there's power at stake. So Mel here, Village Crazy Lady, sums it up. Why are they doing this? So basically, Mitch McConnell's a vegetable on life support in the hospital right now. And because his wife fled to China, which is on its own also interesting, there's no one with power of attorney to pull the plug or give up his seat. His wife fled to China. Why isn't that a bigger story? Because that's, and this is conspiracy theory, but like, was Mitch doing something behind the scenes with a foreign entity? Wife fled to China, so there's no one with power of attorney to pull the plug or give up his seat. Now, the other side of this is she probably fled to China because of this, which is likely by design, because if the seat were vacated before August 3rd, the election would become a special election, which would allow Thomas Massie to run as an independent and potentially win. And the entire Republican Party is going along with this sick charade because they are wholly owned by a foreign country who views Thomas Massie as a serious threat to their power. A lot of people asking why hide McConnell's state. Not like a Dem would win the special election. If McConnell vacated before August 3rd, cut off, it'd be a special election and anyone can register as it. So that's one theory as to why they're doing this. And it's definitely got some validity. And Mel's one of those people who's kind of a right-leaning voice, but she's one of those people who just has integrity. So, it's kind of like, I trust her calls, even if I don't always agree with her takes or her, kind of like family values, right-wing type worldview. She's right on a lot of stuff. So, I think this is a good example of that and a good example of why that right-left kind of mentality paradigm has to die. And to sum this up, got a couple of some icing and candles on this cake for you here. My boy Gio Debata is back on the scene. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. Very cool. Gio talked to Mitch via Ouija. I just thought that was pretty brilliant. political satire there. But then you have this reality right here, which I thought made for a nice transition into our banner segment of the day. But she makes a great point here about how the Democrats could be going after Mitch McConnell, but they're busy doing something else. Democrats are busy using Graham Platner to punch left so they can secretly honor Mitch McConnell's wish to spend his final days doing what he loved most, obstructing democracy. Good old Mitch. That's our guy.
Yay! I like that song. Yay!
All right. We are now going to talk about the issue that dominated political news all week and has dominated political news for a little while. And that is this man right here, Graham Platner of Maine. Now, I've been talking about this guy way more than I want to. Okay, let's get that right out of the way. Let's get that out of the way right out in front here. I don't have any particular reason to talk about this guy other than what the Democratic Party is doing to this guy, because it's just part and parcel for the Democratic Party to do this to anyone who doesn't follow, the orders of the donor masters, the payroll masters in the DNC. It's a terrible organization. They're worse than the Republicans. I hate to say that. I was a Democrat. They are worse than the Republicans. They are more catty and backstabbing, which says a lot because the Republicans are catty and backstabbing. But the Democrats are even worse. And what makes them worse is this, like, the smugness, the smugnerance, the commitment to, like, well, our view is the right one, so we're better than everyone else. But anyway, don't get me started on how much I hate the Democrats, because I'll just go off on a 20-minute tangent. But there's a good reason I've been talking about this guy a lot, and it's because it's the reason that the Democrats can't win elections anymore. And we're going to go deep into the weeds here, and I think there's probably a good 2 segments here. The first segment is just going to be going through how the left and right align on stuff like this. You see the far left, the socialist, communist types, basically repeating the same garbage, spewing the same dumpster juice that the religious right spews. And we're gonna get with, and then the second half of this kind of segment here, or the second segment, is going to be about how stupid specifically the left is for kind of taking the right-wing, focus grouped political, consultant smear and running with it along with the right, and just pointing out to the left that, like, you guys do this to yourselves, and this is why the left never wins anything. So first half is going to be, like I said, Platner's whole smear campaign, and then the left's reaction to it, and how stupid they look now, especially now considering all the stuff that's come out. So let's dive in head first, okay? The first ground zero here is this Politico story that dropped on July 6th. Dropped! New sex smear just dropped, you guys. Oh my God, sex smear! So what's interesting about this is this smear already had been spread in a different story before this one, but this was kind of like a repackaging of the same smear. A woman who dated Graham Platner says he sexually assaulted her. I just want the truth out there. I want people to have the whole scope of who he is as a person, she said, of the Maine Dem who has faced a string of scandals over past offensive online comments and accusations of mistreating women. Platner responded, "These allegations are troubling, serious, and false. Any accusations of non-consensual behavior are categorically untrue." So that's his That was his original response. And we don't need to read every last detail of this because we're going to get into a lot of the accusations in a little bit more details as we go here. But to sum it up, this woman claims he came over and had sex with her and that it wasn't consensual, the sex part. Maybe she invited him over or whatever, but she insists that the sex part was not consensual. That's the overall thrust of the accusation, to use a term. Now, this is where it gets really silly, because this is where you see what's really going on here. The following 3 House Republicans are currently being accused of assault or sexual harassment: Corey Mills, Chuck Edwards, and someone else. Their names aren't important. What's important is no one takes these accusations seriously unless they go through a court. And these guys' accusations may be way more serious. I haven't really dug into them. Unless it's something that has like court evidence, it's pretty clear to me that these accusations are dug up by consultants to smear political opposition. And Americans are still so fucking childish and junior high mentality about sex that it works, because Americans like live in this puritanical delusion of like, oh, one man, one woman, and oh, we're all married and happy. No one's fucking happily married. Very few people, you know, and if you are, good on you, because it's a tough slog. And it takes someone that two people willing to be committed through good times and bad times, which is not easy to find in this day and age. Do I sound like a divorced dad? Yes, I do. But again, this part of the American psyche frustrates me to no end, because when are we going to grow the fuck up and realize that everybody has sex, and just because someone did the sex in a way you don't like doesn't mean that they're a criminal? Jerry Seinfeld dating a 17-year-old woman who's a legal age, who's still in high school, might be unsavory and disgusting from your point of view, but it's totally legal and it's totally consensual. So he's not a pedophile, okay? A pedophile is someone who fucks little kids. And this is where the American psyche just, any little, and again, the left, I'm getting way too emotional. I need to calm down and organize my thoughts here. But what frustrates me the most about this, as I'm going to hammer on today, is how the left has become the religious right in this world. Like all of a sudden we're like, well, I have the moral high ground as someone who cut my dick off and sewed tits on and became a woman to tell these people that that's sexual assault, and I disown that person. It's like, who in the hell are you to stand on some moral pedestal and make these accusations in the first place? And again, it's like, I'm not, you know, I'm far from having any moral high ground. You know, since getting divorced, I have a little bit of a body count problem. I would not fare well in politics. But the left was supposed to be the party of like the political part of the political spectrum that valued like freedom of expression and sexual freedom. And, you know, that's one of the reasons that pro-choice is a thing. It's because women should be able to kind of like be sexually promiscuous if they so choose. And I even hate that word, because it's kind of like you have to play the field a little bit to find what you like as a human being. And from the time that you're a child, you're guilted about your sexual fucking urges. Your natural biological urge to procreate is immediately vilified in your psyche by these religious kooks. And now the left is part of it. They're like, oh God, well, you know, anything she said is true because I hate guys with beards who were in the military. It's disgustingly stupid. So you have this dynamic where the left suddenly siding with GOP slime merchants and strategists. And, you know, you could see this dynamic right out of the gate, because all the worst people were on the Platner's the Grapist train, right? Like John Fetterman, Scott Jennings on CNN. Those guys are, oh, this guy's a terrible person who needs to, when those people are saying it, that's when you got to stop and go, okay, this might actually just be a ruse. This might just be a smear campaign. And, you know, here's a good example of that. Just a quick clip to share with you here. Some receipts for my statement.
We had a very
Look at this.
The one thing I know about Republicans,
Kevin
when
McCarthy.
we had a very bad candidate.
The one thing I know. Listen.
Found out. We walked away.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. When Matt Gaetz came forward,
Listen.
the one thing I know about Republicans, when we had a very bad candidate and found out, we didn't vote for that person. We walked away.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. When Matt Gaetz came forward, we got rid of him.
Yeah. Kevin McCarthy, as always, great to see
It's
you.
funny. You know what's funny about that is, first of all, how wildly out of touch that is, because Donald Trump is the president and they had to ignore multiple accusations of sexual assault, a lot of which I think were garbage, most of which I think are garbage against Trump. Like if any of those accusations had merit, why did they wait so long? The guy's been rich for a long time. So if E. Jean Carroll wanted money, she could have came at him for rape way before he was a political thing. And that's the part that, the left people who are clutching their pearls and jumping on a moral high horse about this don't even stop to think about, is the whole, and they instantly just are, all of a sudden, people on the left are Kevin McCarthy now. And this is where it gets really good, because this was my Twitter feed. Watch this. This is actual tweets from Rashida Tlaib and Ben Shapiro condemning Graham Platner together in unison in their own special ways.
I like that song. Yay!
I'm withdrawing my endorsement of Graham Platner and calling on him to exit the race immediately so that he can be replaced by a progressive fighter who will deliver for the people and help win back the Senate. That's what he was, dummy.
I like that song. Yay!
These allegations are devastating and must be taken seriously. And here's Ben Shapiro echoing her sentiment. Man, I can't believe, and also like trying to dunk on the Democrats for like this is the greatest part about this is the Republicans who have a president with credible accusations of rape against him. Joe Biden had credible accusations of rape against him. Bill Clinton had credible. Obama's one of the few who didn't, and they just called him gay. But that's the sexual deviant thing they had to like make you, smear him with, like, oh, he might be secretly gay. Okay, maybe he is. Who cares? Whatever. I don't care what people do in their bedrooms, and you shouldn't either, unless they're raping children. Like, anyway, man, I can't believe the candidate with the Nazi tattoo who bragged about jerking off in porta potties and allegedly said he wanted to grape home invaders, but not in a gay way, is also allegedly rapey. It's always the ones you most suspect. So the grape home invaders thing is such a typical like heterosexual male thing to say. Like, you break in my house, buddy, and I'll rape you. I'll bend you over. YouTube, this is satire. I'll bend you over. You come in my house, pal. You better be ready. I will bend you up. That's the kind of thing that like a heterosexual tough guy would say off the cuff. So yeah, okay. He said that. Ben Shapiro, you're so clearly offended by that. And in the case of Ben Shapiro, like Rashida Tlaib fell for it. She fell, which we're going to get into what she fell for in graphic detail. But Ben Shapiro's not falling for it. He's doing his job, spreading propaganda for his masters. In Rashida's case, she has pressure from the party masters who serve the same donors that Ben Shapiro serves. So it all comes full circle when you really think about it. And then you get to assholes like this guy, David Frum, of all people, Canadian neocon David Frum. And Ashley here, I don't know who runs this account, but in the Graham Platner thing, she's had a lot of like really banger tweets about the thing. Like, as someone who can clearly recognize what's going on, this is a smear tactic that gets used to divide up left movements, this sexual assault thing, because it's the pussy hat crowd is very sensitive to it and immediately goes full emotional and responds in that way. You see what's happening? They tried everything to destroy Platner, finally got you all to comply, then blamed you for what they did. Now they're telling you not to support Palestine anymore. The truth is they are still going to lose this race. Instead of taking responsibility, they'll blame it on the left. Platner was on track to win before they started their campaign. They're not going to lose because Susan Collins is who they want in that seat. She's a dedicated, proven vessel of our greatest ally right there. If you're an here's David Frum, Democrat liberal hero of the left, David Frum, advising Democrats, if you're an ex-Platnerite, now sadder but wiser, there's still time to stop the Gaza First socialists from giving away the Michigan Senate seat for factional reasons, the way they tried and likely succeeded in giving away the Maine seat. So now what they're doing is they're like, oh, see, okay, that worked in Maine. Now we're going to point it at Michigan. What can we do to get this guy out now? And, you know, they're not even hiding what they're doing. They don't care about grape accusations. They care about keeping the donors happy. And what do the donors want? Well, David Frum just told you. They want Susan Collins. And this is a tweet from another great account on X, Twitter X. Maine held a hard-fought Democratic Senate primary, but unfortunately, the voters chose wrong, and now the DC party bosses need to select a new candidate. Sorry, but that's how democracy works. You know, as a guy who does a political talk show consistently, I have a clip bank. And this reminded me of a clip that I'm just going to pull up. And I want to thank Jimmy Dore again for highlighting this clip as he did back in the day. But this pretty much sums the whole Graham Platner ordeal up for you right here. Watch this.
If you want to pull the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking, you must show them that you're capable of not voting for them. If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party because the left had nowhere to go. If you want to pull the party.
So that's a little out of context. There's a little bit more of that where they go into talking about how the Democratic Party, and they show, what's that guy's name? Joe fucking, well, what is he, New Hampshire, Connecticut guy? Joe Lieberman. They show Joe Lieberman and Al Gore, these terrible, and they kind of talk about how the Democratic Party basically tells the voters, like, they find a way to rig the primary and choose the person that the donors want, and then they make sure everyone goes along with it, or they smear them like this. And that was Lawrence speaking the truth before he started getting that multiple sclerosis now money. And multiple sclerosis now is what I call MSNBC post rebrand. MS Now. And again, this is the dynamic we're dealing with in this Platner thing here, and Rodney sums it up well. The best thing about being Democrats in America is if our greatest ally doesn't like our nominee, they'll just pick a new one for us. Yes, they will. And what's going on here is, let me just kind of break this down for you from my perspective. The Republicans are going to lose this November. They've done a terrible job. You know, Trump has become everything they voted against. The Republicans thought they could just let Trump get in and then make him do all the things he said that the standard neocon Republicans would do, and people would just go along with it. And it's clear by like the paid propagandists they have on the internet, the Jack Posobiec types and the Benny Johnsons of the world. But here's what's really going on here. The Republicans are going to lose, and the lobby knows this. So what they're doing right now is locking down the Democratic Party. And you see this with Platner. You see this with, Al Said in Michigan. That's why they're screaming communism from every rooftop there is. And there's a constant, trough of propaganda slop around Mamdani, because he's actually going to do things the voters wanted him to do, and, spend our money on things that benefit our society, the free stuff thing. Oh, you guys just want free stuff. Yeah, I want my tax money to work for me, dickheads. Okay? Fuck your stupid, and I have to say fuck here because fuck your free stuff, you retards. No one thinks any of this stuff is free. We just want our tax money to go to things that we can actually benefit our society, have our money be used on us. What a wild concept, isn't it, in America today? But that's why they're going after the Democratic Party. And it's very clear if you look at stuff like this. And again, this account has really been nailing it. She says they're even going after people who donated to him now. There are no criminal charges, no trials, just accusations and vibes being weaponized to target the left and anyone who supports the movement. Y'all allowed the same people who supported Andrew Cuomo just a few months ago to turn you into zombies. Again, it's the left never learns from this stuff. They did this with Bernie Sanders. There's a guy at the rally with the Nazi flag. They tried. Graham Platner as a Nazi tattoo.
I like that song. Yay!
And it works on you dummies. So they're not just stopping at the candidate this time. They're going after the people who voted for him. And the Democrats need to cleanse those voters on behalf of the lobby, our greatest ally, so that once they take back Congress in November, business as usual will continue. And I mean, that's the main reason I think that the establishment didn't. I mean, the establishment will co-opt and use whoever gets in regardless, as you can see. But they would have much preferred Kamala Harris, because if Kamala Harris was president right now, none of this would be like, everyone would be like, yay, today we bombed and killed a bunch of leaders in Iran. Everything's great. You're going to have to suck up the $6 gas prices because we're doing it for a woman of color. Powerful woman of color is doing it for freedom. And we got to, we want girls in Iran to not have to wear burqas or whatever the dumb fucking liberal slop they serve up to get people on board for these wars, like they did with Ukraine, which is, how did that work out? So we're about to enter the second part of this. Let me set that up and I will be right back after this brief pause. Citizens of the internet, thank you for sticking with me on this lovely Sunday afternoon, paying homage to the lion of a senator, Lindsey Graham, who left us late yesterday. A saddened country mourns. All right, enough of the sarcasm. Let's get back to talking about Graham Platner, because hopefully this is the last time I have to talk about Graham Platner. I suspect it is not, because the guy has kind of become a sample, a great example of why the left will never win elections, why the left completely punches itself in the dick at every chance it gets. And that's the saddest part about this, is watching the left eat itself, watching lefties become these morally pious, religious right-wingers. You know, the same people who wagged their finger at gay people back in the 80s are what the lefties are now. Like, oh, he did the sex and she claims there was a sexual assault. And we all know if someone says it, it's absolutely true. We don't need any evidence or anything. Believe all women. And, watching lefties become these morally pious people it's been kind of the bane of my existence for the last 10 years, to be honest, because I consider myself very on the left, like politically and socially. But I'm also a dude who has a penis and likes girls. And you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to like cut my own dick off to satiate crazy people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still a guy who has biological urges. And I think that's why, guys or people in general relate to this guy, because he's a simple, like, he's a regular person. He's not, trying to be held to some higher standard. Like, I went to MIT and I fucking have a degree from Princeton, Cornell West. Like, yeah, you real feckless weenie is what Cornell West did and Bernie Sanders are. Feckless weenies. Those are the kind of people that get elevated in the left. Feckless weenies. Like Bernie Sanders, I remember, oh my God, I cannot stand that man. What a spineless fucking jellyfish of a man, Bernie Sanders. Just when the Rogan stuff came out after he did, that was like probably the smartest thing he could have done. He would have won the election. And the manufactured outrage brigade, if you remember, Graham Platner, Bernie Sanders. Well, I'm going to start calling it Graham Platnering. It's a verb now, because this is the most, blatant, obvious version of it, which I'm getting sidetracked now because I'm so mad about that the lefties keep falling for this over and over and over again. It's like this sexual assault rape. They just step on it and jump on it repeatedly. Boom! Oh, like that again. Boom! Oh, the sexual assault rape again. Boom! The saddest part about all of this, again, is the Democrats stepping on that rake. And I'm going to start calling these people the near attendant left. I think that is much like Nick Cruz calls the Ukraine war supporters the NATO left. I'm going to start calling the moral outrage brigade the near attendant left, because it's all fake and manufactured outrage. And I have near attendant in my intro talking about blaming Hillary Clinton's faults on Russia, so you know what kind of a person she is. A lot of people who I respect, though, fell for this grape accusation nonsense. And I think for a lot of the left, their take, and I understand this take, is he's a Democrat. He's running as a Democrat. Fuck the Democrats. Fair take. But I ask you this. Thomas Massie, running as a Republican, would you vote for Thomas Massie? Do you at least hope he wins his race based on the things he believes? So again, it's like with the lefties that hate Platner because he's running as a Democrat, it's like, if you can get into one of those big clubs, that's how you do it, right? Like you're much less likely to win as on a third party ticket. That's just the reality. But you also don't have to deal with being the sexual, assault rake. You don't have to step on the sexual assault rake if you're an independent candidate. I mean, they'll do it to you too if you're independent. So whatever. But the point of me going over this stuff again is not to scold my friends on the left, but just to kind of like meticulously document this for them and go, look, guys, you're better than this. Okay, come on. Think with your head and not your emotional, don't be the near attendant left. And we're going to go back to Dr. Fishbones again here to kick this one off. Democrat Party made up of women who hate men and men who hate themselves. The mainstream party definitely is. Like I said, it's a sad but true reality. The Democrats have a problem with testosterone, and that's just visibly true. Not good. Testosterone bad is what the Democrats believe. Guys who want to do the sex with women, unacceptable. Especially outside of a holy marriage. Especially if they're not doing it in the sanctity of marriage. Who does this sound like? Who does this? Can you believe that the Democratic Party of today is the religious right of the 1980s? It's insane, but that's exactly how they operate. Like the religious factions of the Republican Party. I mean, that's the Overton window thing that Bill Maher wants to ignore. So, the left steps on this rake whenever a sex scandal accusation comes up in their own party. And as I showed you a few minutes ago, you can always tell when these things are the most manufactured because the Fox News crowd will be every bit as self-righteous and morally outraged as the left is on this stuff. Ben Shapiro and Rashida Tlaib will both find Graham Platner to be morally reprehensible despite voting for money that murders women and children overseas. Oh, he was accused of doing the sex by someone. That's way more morally reprehensible than sending bombs to a foreign country to murder families. Get a grip on yourselves, politicians. Jesus. The only difference between Rashida and Ben on that is that Ben Shapiro would be defending Graham Platner if he was running as a Republican, and he would. But Gen X girl, surprisingly, has been one of the smarter people on the left. And not surprisingly, I mean, she's usually pretty sharp on a lot of this stuff, but she's done a great job. And I love seeing this from a woman because, it's usually the women that are the most emotional reaction to this kind of stuff, right? And so I love seeing there's a few accounts actually on the left that are females who have been, doing a great job shining a light on what a scam these accusations are. And Gen X girls, you found the button that sends the pussy hat people into a rabid frenzy where logic is replaced by an uncontrollable need to collect scalps. So sloppy hit job. Here is the reasoning is right here. One can have positive memories with their rapist. Not sure why that is highlighted as a contradiction when it's incredibly common. So Politico claims Ricicott told them that Graham Platner sexually assaulted her. Jenny Ricicott, a Maine Democrat, who said she dated him casually off and on between 20. So this is the first, I think, one from the New York Times. This isn't the Politico one. Between 2019 and 2021, she said the post deepened her belief that he did not respect women. When I saw the old comments he made online, she said, I recognized a version of him that I had experiences with. This is like he posted something on Facebook that hurt my feelings. Like, what? Everyone thinks someone they're obsessed with posts on Facebook is about them. But let's keep going here. Asked about the post in a follow-up interview this spring, Miss Ricicott, who said she agreed with many of Mr. Platner's policies, said she had an on and off relationship with Mr. Platner and had positive memories. That right there is a telling as well. On and off relationship. So a lot of these women, get the I was raped thing when, it doesn't work out or, the guy moves on to someone else and they feel jilted or they feel rejected. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, in retrospect, I don't feel right about that. That's what happens. And I'm sorry, but that is not grape. Miss Ricicott also said that in 2021, he arrived at her house drunk. After she had asked him not to come over, she declined to elaborate, but said she cut off contact soon after the episode and found his behavior reckless and unsettling. People say, how did we not notice the propaganda before while living in it? Platner's volunteer Discord server is calling for him to drop out. So this kind of shows you how these people get picked off. But for Democrats who believe an image of skulls and bones is a Nazi tattoo, it's even easier to believe women will fall asleep next to their rapist. Democrats are doomed, and when it's this easy for the opposition to pick them off. And this is what I've been saying all along. The right gets is an equal response from lefties on this type of stuff as they do from right-wing moral preeners. And lefties, you're supposed to be better than that. You're supposed to be better than the like, oh, gay stuff grosses me out, so I'm going to legislate against it. You know, and I think some people will argue, well, this is different because, you know, it's a sexual accusation that he did something against the law. Fine. Then it needs to be litigated in a court of law before you make a decision. You can't just say, well, accusations are reality. If that's the case, I could just say, hey, my next door neighbor is the Unabomber, even though they have the guy in jail already. I just found that out, and that's reality because I said it. He posted about it. He on Instagram. He said something to his therapist about it. That's how valid these accusations actually are. And it's a strategy, again, to pick you off. From Nazi tattoo to the sex crimes, all of this is manufactured. And you'd have to be a right-winger or a total rube not to see it. I'm sorry. That's just the reality on the ground. Here's Matt Stoller. And this is the quote tweet that the woman before us had. I'll have more thoughts on Platner, Damerung, and its appalling end later. I don't know what that means. Is that some kind of a battle? But I think the macro political significance of it is realizing he was part of a coherent and focused faction that is oriented not at beating the GOP, but at taking control of the Democratic Party. Now, interesting here, Neera Tanden retweeted this, and Matt Stoller says Neera Tanden retweets crypto lobbyist Justin Slaughter, making it extremely clear that the Platner accusations are a factional play from oligarchs. So, to explain this in layman's terms for you, what this guy is telling you is this Justin Slaughter guy is a donor, crypto donor guy. And this is an organized push to get working class people like Platner out of the Democratic Party. They're like, no. This is our hollow entity to do what we want with and take power and give power or whatever. Interestingly enough, they don't have much power. But this is, again, one of the reasons why I am not a Democrat anymore. And just to kind of put the sauce here on, you know, here is Mark Ames kind of pointing out how Neera Tanden is gloating about this, about being able to dethrone leftist candidates with sex crime accusations. So this is, you know, the Neera Tanden left winning. And she's gloating over this. You know, one thing to know about them is at least they're consistent. But this guy says, this is how a true DC pro gloats over her enemy's smoldering corpses by pretending not to gloat. Only saddened and concerned about the fate of our country. We amateurs ain't shit. I love Mark Ames. Very great. Another great. I mean, he's a writer, but he's like, to me, kind of what Matt Taibbi used to be, you know? Very on point. And then you have, of course, I don't know why I went back to Big Style. Let's go back to Big Style. Sorry about that. Jumping around here. Katie Halper, who's always been consistent and great leftist voice. And Katie is a smart lefty, not a Neera Tanden leftist. She jumps into the mix here and explains how fake Neera and her claims are. And she says, don't for a second think Neera Tanden and the DNC pseudo-feminists she represents care at all about Platner's victims or sexual assault. They didn't even acknowledge Tara Reade's accusations against Biden or Juanita Broderick's accusations against Clinton. They just don't like Platner's politics. She forgot like, of course, but that is the reality. And this guy responded to her tweet and reminded me of this. He said, remember the time she outed her own employee who had been sexually harassed? And this is an article from BuzzFeed News about that, because I had forgotten about this, but you know, this is a little bit of an older story, but it just shows you the consistency of the Neera Tandens in the world. This is from 2018, actually, it looks like. The original story, the BuzzFeed story. Center for American Progress staff was shocked after Neera Tanden named the anonymous harassment victim in an all-staff meeting. 2 days after BuzzFeed News unveiled allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation at one of the nation's top liberal think tanks, the Center for American Progress President Neera Tanden met with staff to restore confidence in the organization's ability to handle the issue and ensure that employees feel safe. This kind of makes me wonder why BuzzFeed News went out of business, because they tanked pretty quick after publishing stuff like this. But during the meeting Wednesday afternoon, Tanden named the anonymous victim at the center of the story, a revelation that CAP spokesperson said was unintentional, and what began as a tense meeting became what 3 staffers in the room described as a textbook example of the organization's failures to appropriately handle sexual harassment cases. There's literally one thing you cannot do in this meeting, and that is out the victim, and Neera did it multiple times. It also destroys whatever small level of confidence in the system remained, one CAP employee who was in the room said in a text to BuzzFeed News. As a manager, I don't know how I can tell staff to trust the system when the head of the organization just outed the victim in front of the entire organization. It is impossible to trust her. The point of me showing you all this is not to remind you what a scumbag Neera Tanden is, but just to say that these are disingenuous sexual assault claims being weaponized to get someone who largely politically agrees with the left out of there on behalf of the oligarchs. So congratulations, morally preening lefties who believe this nonsense, because you are sheeple. I'm sorry. I hope you learn from this, though, for the future, because this is what it's really about. And I said this the whole time. It really bothered me how many smart leftist accounts on Twitter were like, Platner's a rapist. He's a military guy who likes to kill. Yes, you're spreading the smears. This is why they actually wanted him out, bolded and circled in red for you. This is why Platner was not even going to be allowed in this and by the Democrats. And I explained this earlier. They know what's coming in November. The GOP is going to lose, and this party is going to take over. So they're shaping it to ensure that business as usual continues. Now, this is the real reason that they went after this guy, but it wouldn't have, they can't come out, right? The lobby that's trying to get rid of this guy used to be able to come out and go, oh, he's an anti-Semite. Clearly, look, he doesn't like, he anti-Semite, racist, gone. That easy. But that doesn't work anymore. So the sex crime thing that's a good one. That gets both the morally preening religious right people and the lefties who somehow have now, become sexual, the arbiters of sexual morality to single, adults in 2026. Yeah, that's what the left stands for. What you do in your bedroom needs to be holy and sacred. So this was kind of my take on this a while back, but I said, sorry, pearl-clutching right-wingers and clown leftists. You will never convince me this was a real sex scandal. It was always about this and only this. And this is an example of one of the lefties who, again, this guy usually has great takes. In fact, I agree with him on almost everything. He's sufficiently militant, or girl, whatever, it's Michael David, so it's a guy. But suddenly he's a right-wing moralist shaking a finger at people who were defending Platner. Right here. Look at this. Like, what is that? Respectful men don't get accused. Really? Is that really how it is? Gay men don't get accused because they don't try to fuck girls. 1 in 5 women who have been raped don't come forward less when their attacker is a powerful white man. So it's a race thing now, of course. It's not just a male thing. It's only white guys that do the graping. Glenn and Tracy and Anna and Grim and Taibbi are victim-blaming women who haven't been raped yet by further discouraging women from coming forward. So thank you for your moral high ground, my good right-wing friend who clearly wears the pants of morality and can point down at the lessers and accuse them of, enabling grapists because they have the courage and the ability to see through fake grape claims. This is, and again, I point this out not to scold my friend here, who's a great guy, has a lot of great taste and largely sees the world, or politics anyway, as I do. But to say you're better than this, like what? Why do you guys have to jump on this moral high horse all the time? So let's keep moving. This is another one that was kind of disappointing to me. This is one of my favorite accounts on Twitter, Gabe Aristopol, and I stand by that. Gabe Aristopol is one of the best accounts on Twitter. I'm not going to unfollow him or block him or anything. This is something that we disagreed on, and I hope that he looks at this situation now and goes, okay, I was wrong about that. I'm going to be more, woke to the idea that this might be a smear campaign when something like this comes up in the future. Okay. But he got this one wrong. And what's with the moral crusade? This is the thing that frustrates me the most about this. Not even that they, believe the accusations and instantly sided with the woman or whatever over the politician. I mean, that most likely should be a good person's default position, right? And I understand that side of it. It's like, by default, you're going to side with the normal person over the guy running for elected office or the guy in elected office, because most of the time those people are sociopaths. By the same token, people deserve due process. And then this is the part, again, that frustrates me the most, is the pointing at other people like, oh, are you going to apologize for now that the media smeared this guy again? Like, has Emma or Hassan or any of the usual suspects who is pushing Platner apologized or admitted a mistake yet? Now, admitting mistake, fine, but apologizing for the actions of someone else is not something anyone should have to do, because you can't control the actions of someone else. And I said no, because as usual, the whole thing is a smear campaign invented by Zionists. I'm surprised people are dumb enough to buy it, and I'll leave it at that. But this account is another one that I generally love, but this speaks to the Nazi warmonger smears that they tried. They're like, oh, he's got a Nazi tattoo. Again, no one except Nazi collectionists knew that was a Nazi tattoo. And the guy had it covered. He said he didn't know. Once he found out, he got it covered. To me, okay, whatever. People make mistakes. He didn't know, and he covered it up when he found out. To me, it's open and shut. That's it. End of story. It's like the guy from that. I did a piece a while back on the guy from the band, the Russian dude. What's that band called? Slaughter to Prevail. He ran with right-wing people and had a black sun or whatever, some symbol that he didn't know that it was associated. Again, you can associate anything with Nazis and make it a thing. But this guy runs with this dumb shit, thing about the military stuff. There's a whole attempt initially, and I saw other lefties doing this too, to use the military stuff against him, oh, he's stands on a pile of dead, falling for, where. Okay, let me just read this tweet. I'm getting everything jumbled together here. He says, imagine dying on Graham Platner Hill. And by Graham Platner Hill, I mean the pile of dead bodies in small Iraqi village that he and his stormtrooper mercenary comrades slaughtered during the most enjoyable experience of his life. I thought you meant the hill of fake rape victims, is what I said, fake rape victims. But this is the thing about this that, again, it's disingenuous. Someone said that he worked for Blackwater, which he didn't. Then they said he worked for a mercenary firm, which I couldn't find any info on. If you have that, put it in the comments. I didn't see that he worked for a mercenary firm at all. I saw that he was a military guy who did a tour of duty, but he renounced his time in the military. In fact, before this was the smear that, oh, he loved the military and he loved stomping Iraqis. That was his whole thing. He just loved killing people. He's whatever you need to not vote for this guy is what he did. Okay. It's tiring. The guy renounced a lot of his military. And in fact, they tried to smear him as anti the troops. This from Google AI. The critical context around Platner and his military service. Military record. Platner did not leave the military due to renunciation, but rather finished his service to address injuries, notably taking medical retirement as a 100% disabled veteran dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. He completed multiple combat deployments, serving 3 tours in Iraq with the Marines and a tour in Afghanistan with the Maryland Army National Guard. So maybe the Maryland Army National Guard is the mercenary force he worked for. Maybe that's it. Okay. I'll cede that point if that's the case. Campaign and policy stance. Now, this is where the point I was making. During his 2026 Senate run to challenge incumbent Susan Collins, his military background was a central pillar of his platform. He frequently invoked now listen to this is important, frequently invoked his combat experience to heavily criticize U.S. involvement in forever wars, but also faced immense backlash from veteran advocacy groups over resurfaced controversial internet posts that disparaged other soldiers. It doesn't sound like he was very proud of his military service, does it? And this is the Reddit posts that they originally tried to use to smear him. And then they realized the voters were like, no, we're glad that he's that way. You know, if you go back and read, I did an episode. I'm not going to go back and visit this because I already covered this. But if you go back and read the original smears against this guy, the Reddit posts, he called himself a communist. He called cops bastards in defense of a black man. He was not this like militant Nazi guy that they tried to paint him as to get you to believe because of this, because those are 2 big red flags that the Democrats can't have in their new party that's coming in, because you know who controls the Democrat Party, and this guy is against that entity. His military background, I'm just going to repeat this line one more time for you. His military background was a central pillar of his platform. He frequently invoked his combat experience to heavily criticize U.S. involvement in quote-unquote forever wars. Again, doesn't sound like a proud, like, yeah, we got him, guys. That's what they wanted, the first picture they tried to paint of this guy for you. So according to Google AI and sources, this is where he stood, right? And I lost one of my slides here. This is where I think I went off script a little bit. But let's get real about this now, okay? Because sexual assault accusations are a serious thing. And as we've said before, the Democrats tend to ignore them when the candidate's pro greatest ally, pro war enough, like Clinton or Biden. This is Tara Reid. She is a voice who has actually experienced sexual assault from a legitimate politician. And I'm not even saying this Platner's accuser story is fake by this, like it's not legitimate. But the court needs to decide that. Like the media doesn't get to decide that a grape happened. That's a serious accusation. Again, serious accusations need to have factual data to back them up. And a court should be, if you're going to accuse someone of a serious crime like that, it needs to be litigated in court, not the media, not the press. So this is Tara Reid on the Platner accuser. This is what she had to say. And she was, of course, if you know, had to flee to Russia because Biden got elected despite, her saying, hey, Biden did something bad to me. And there was so much proof. There was a Larry King episode her mom had called into around the time it happened that they tried to pull off the internet. There was so much like circumstantial evidence and other stuff, like corroborating evidence, I guess, not circumstantial, but corroborating evidence behind her claim that just isn't there on this one. But this is what Tara Reid said in response to Katie Halper. I would say that Further, she said, because Katie said, if you remember, let's go back to Katie's tweet. Don't think for a second this Neera Tanden in the DNC pseudo-feminist she represents care about and the pseudo at all about Platner's victims or sexual assault. They didn't even acknowledge Tara Reade's accusations or Biden or Juanita Broderick's against Clinton. So Tara says, going back to Tara's tweet here. Whoops. Oh, that was a little tease for the end of the segment. Exactly what Katie Helps was spot on. I would say further that neither party cares about sexual assault. Democrat, elite, predator class folks do not care about justice or sexual assault. They care that Platner is not the right kind of Democrat. The Dem elites want compromised candidates they can control and that support the party line, especially regarding the support of our greatest ally. Tara, you are a goddamn legend. So Tara can see what's going on here, and that's someone who's actually been assaulted. So I think she has a lot more credibility than the overly emotional leftists who suddenly become right-wing moral judges when a sexual assault act, when an unverified sexual assault claim surfaces. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, Jesus, holy Christ. That was amoral, what you just did. I'm going to go shove a dildo up my ass and walk in a pride parade now, which is totally fine for you to do. But don't act like you're a moral fucking high grounder who can point at other people on unfounded accusations. What happened to the left that was about sexual freedom? That's my point. I'm not trying to disparage gay people. I'm not trying to disparage Tara Reade or Democrats in general that are left. I'm always trying to disparage Democrats, let's be honest. But I'm not trying to disparage lefties who are otherwise smart. But let's, as we near the end of this, Matt Stoller has been doing some really great work lately. Actually, and he got this little bit, looks like it's sourced from Facebook, but it's from actual Maine voters because no one seems to care what they think about this. Like, what do the actual voters think about this whole thing? Yeah. Platner quit, so whatever. This is what Stoller says. There was Al Franken and Elliot Spitzer too. The whole approach of using such claims as intra-party warfare is going to make people less likely to believe claims of sexual assault. Fair point. Just as they no longer believe claims of anti-Semitism. Matt, you just touched on something so important.
You're an anti-Semite.
And that is why these claims are being used, like I said earlier. The anti-Semite thing would be easy with Platner. Look, he had a Nazi tattoo. That didn't work. So they had to go to the sex assault thing because the left buys that slop. That's the slop that the left will suck down like it's a cherry Slurpee or whatever. Whoa, just checked Facebook and the Neera grandmas are pissed. So listen to voters. Anna Coughlin. I live in Maine. I am pretty engaged in our current national political shit show. Lifelong Dem and more recently independent. So right there, a woman after my own heart, more recently independent. She broke with the Democratic Party, as most people are going to do. It should go down in flames. It's a terrible, hollow Trojan horse for Republican policy. I'm convinced of the prospect of Platner in the Senate scared the establishment R's and D's because he is an extraordinarily gifted communicator and also a very real person. He has the potential to build a movement towards radical transformation, so he has to go. Wrong person? No. Real person, bad dude who has put a lot of effort into becoming a thoughtful, repentant, honest dude. Hardest working candidate I've ever seen. I'm 80 and I'm not stupid and I'm totally pissed at what's happening. Again, it's very sad that the left allows this stuff to happen because it's just, it alienates the people you need the most, which are these working class people who the Democrat Party used to represent, but clearly doesn't anymore. And, this is the other thing that really bothers me. And I've seen this with the left. I talked about this before with people change, and you have to understand that, like, especially when it comes to, political campaigns, they're going to dig up your past every time. But I'm not the same person right now that I was 20 years ago. And you probably aren't either. And people change. And so you can't, you can dig up these aspects of people's past, but if they're an honest person like this guy was, he said, look, I'm ashamed of stuff that I did. He renounced a lot of his military service stuff. He also said he enjoyed he had a lot of comrades and people in the service that he enjoyed time with, but there was a lot more at stake here for Democrats than our greatest ally or believing women. And I think what I'm about to show you right here, does a very accurate job of kind of pinpointing the fear that the status quo of the Democratic Party has with a guy like Graham Platner. So Ashley here says he gets it. Dems had a lot on the line if he wants. So let's listen to this.
Withdrawing from the race.
I think it's really interesting that this suspension is coming at a time where the Democratic Party for the last 10 years has been rattled by controversies over superdelegates. And of course, the 2024 election campaign where Kamala Harris was kind of the chosen heir of the Democratic establishment, and people felt slighted that they didn't feel like they had as much of a say as the party elites. And so Platner using that leverage in this way, I think, is super interesting. I know that the Maine Democratic Party has come out with a convention-style system to try to placate everybody involved. What it will come down.
So before I let him finish this here, I'm gonna let him finish. I'm definitely gonna let him finish.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish.
Okay, I had to find that sound drop. Anyway, the point that he's making here about what the Democrats are doing is a good one, because they are alienating generation after generation by continually showing us that our votes do not matter at all. It doesn't matter who you vote for. We are going to pick the person that the donors want. And I think, that's the big difference really between the Republican and Democrat parties. Someone like Trump was able to muscle through the Republican primary, right? Someone with the money and resources behind them, and a progressive candidate with the right campaign could rally enough small donations, as we've seen, to counter or at least compete with a candidate like Trump, right? Like if you have good progressive policy sets that like 80 to 90% of the country actually wants, people who aren't, rich C words with yachts. And again, I'm not hating on rich people, but it's clearly our political system is clearly weighted in their favor. And I think it would even do them some good to get it weighted back in the other direction, because you don't want people showing up at the harbor with torches and pitchforks either, rich people, so there is that side of it. However, let me let this guy finish.
Just like the superdelegates controversy back in 2016 is who's going to be in that room. And I think right now the Platner camp, the progressive camp of the Democratic Party, which seems to have a lot of momentum outside of Maine, at least, wants to make sure that their people are there. They see the polling coming out right now that says Troy Jackson is doing well. And I think they feel like they still have a lane to have a progressive representative in this race.
Do you think Democrats are now in a better position to beat Susan Collins, or a worse position?
That's a great question. I think everybody in Washington, D.C., left, right, and center has learned not to underestimate Susan Collins. I think she's a very formidable candidate in that state and will be until she decides to retire, until she decides to retire. I think they will be better off right now if they get the progressive that they want. If they don't get a progressive after this progressive candidate, Graham Platner, got 72% of the vote, relatively unchallenged in the Democratic primary, the Democratic Party in Maine will feel like this is a return to form. And they've thrown several establishment Democratic candidates at Susan Collins, and she's eaten them for lunch. So part of the Graham...
eating them for lunch, yeah. It's because there's a reason. Much like Mitch McConnell, she's a completely bought candidate. It's funny because at one point, someone dug up, there were actually sexual accusations against Susan Collins, which I'm going to pull those up right now really quick on Twitter, because I want you to see that she actually cheated on her husband, or she cheated up with a guy whose wife was dying of cancer a while back. A quick sidebar here. This is unplanned. This wasn't part of. I just remembered this. This is just a good example, though, of how important having the establishment behind you is, because these stories get ignored or ran with based on, how much money you have, or whether the establishment. Look at Howard Dean. I remember when Howard Dean, all he did was screech and they threw him out of the race like instantly. It was like, oh, he did a screech. That's totally horrible. Colin's husband made millions from government contracts intended for struggling businesses. There's that. Maybe I need to put cancer in there. Come on, X. All we can find is, there it is. Susan Collins slept with a married man while wife was dying. Well, you get the idea. It's definitely a legitimate scandal on her part, but of course, it's not the same. Susan Collins, cheating on her husband is not going to be treated the same as big growth oyster guy who has anti-greatest ally, anti-other stuff sentiment being, the bad guy. But I'm going to end this piece here by making a suggestion to Platner then, and this is a situation where I think everyone wins. And that is Pam Glatner for Maine. Now, stay with me here. Pam Glatner is Graham Platner after a sex change operation. In this case, everybody wins. The Democrat establishment gets a trans candidate. Pam Glatner gets her progressive anti-greatest ally views still get into the Senate. Voters are happy. And we can all get past the sexual assault, because now that Pam Glatner has changed genders, it's bigotry to dead name her. So the sexual accusations don't even matter. It's kind of like how what's her name? Caitlyn Jenner, killed all those people on the PCH in a car accident, but that was before she was Caitlyn Jenner. So it doesn't matter anymore. So I think this is a situation where everybody wins. Hear me out. Think about this, Democrats. Call me if you need help. I can help you with. Don't call me. Actually, I hate you, Democrats. But I think this is definitely. Hey, what do you think? This is a winning strategy right here. To me, this is one of those things that's a win-win for all involved, right? You get suddenly like a real woke candidate that all the Democrats love because she's transgender and has this whole struggle story. And at one point, she was a military operative or a military guy, and now she's this, stunning and brave Pam Glatner. And you can completely forget about the sex scandals. Voters get progressive policies. Democrat establishment gets a trans candidate. Just think of the ads they can run. And, that's my suggestion here. Graham, think about it. Think about the sex change, my friend. Good work. All right, quick break, and we're going to get into some discussion about the Iran war. And we are back with a story about the Iran war, which is continuing despite, a lot of factors that are very interesting. I would like to start this by just kind of showing you where we're at with everything and a couple of the recent developments around this war. There's just a lot going on, and to be completely honest, I don't know what they're going to do, but I have my thoughts and calls that we're going to discuss right here. So let's start by going back a few days to July 6th. Today's the 12th, so this is about a week ago. And about a week ago, your favorite president, actually, let's go back further than a week ago. About a month ago, we had an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding that I'd covered on the show, which basically an agreement that, hey, we're going to stop shooting at each other. We're going to get things back on the road, back to normal. And you're going to agree X, Y, Z. Well, as we know, our greatest ally wasn't having that. And they quickly violated the MOU and caused the war to resume. Well, fast forward to about a week ago, and you have President Trump here saying that issuing a stark warning to Iran, declaring the U.S. is prepared to completely dismantle the country's infrastructure. In a small part of an afternoon. End quote. If a diplomatic deal cannot be reached. We're going to win one way or the other. We're going to make a deal. We're going to finish the job. Okay, and it won't be tough to finish the job. We can knock out their electricity and power. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people. We can knock down their bridges in 1 hour. We can knock out their energy supply. We can knock out their electricity and power generating plants. And I would say a small part of an afternoon.
Make a deal or we're going to finish the job. Okay? And it won't be.
I should have just
we're
let
going to win
Trump
one way or
talk.
the other.
Such a captivating.
We're either going to make a deal or we're going to finish the job. Okay? And it won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people. We can knock down their bridges in 1 hour. We can knock out their energy supply, all of those big plants that they built, big, beautiful, modern plants. They had a lot of money. They don't have any money now.
I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of bad ones. I've gone to a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. I've never seen anything like this. This is a bad one.
So I responded to this tweet here, and I said, how many times can Trump make silly, empty threats like this before he just looks like a complete and total clown? Too late. And this tweet got seen by a few people. Someone retweeted Trump down here. I love the comments for this. From January 3rd, 2020, Iran never won a war, but never lost a negotiation. So Trump is continuing to talk tough when it comes to Iran. But here's what's really going on. This is Professor Pape here. Professor Pape up in this piece. He says, Hormuz has been effectively closed for days, as video shows. Bad news for the world economy. As oil inventories keep running down, August shock is becoming more likely by the day. And here's a quick animated example of how little traffic is currently going through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, with that, the USA decided to resume war against Iran and begin striking, different targets in the country. And Iran responded. Now, of course, this is all alleged, so I don't want to, put too much weight into this because a lot of times, AI and rumor mill stuff gets into Twitter. and it gets out of hand, and some of it can't be verified. So keep in mind that a lot of this is alleged, but plausible news, because based on what's been happening, right? You know, they told us XYZ, and then we find out later this base was hit, that base was hit. So according to this guy, Iran is brutal tonight. U.S. fighter jet maintenance and repair center in Qatar completely destroyed. U.S. command and control center in Jordan destroyed. U.S. fuel depots and facilities in Jordan destroyed. Patriot missile systems in Kuwait destroyed. A satellite communications antenna in Qatar destroyed. Al Dhafra Air Base in UAE destroyed. And they're not done yet. I like this lady's response. Isn't it weird how Iran never destroys schools, hospitals, or food depots? Yes, it's very weird. I mean, what's wrong with them? That's not how you do war. What's the problem? Meanwhile, while the U.S. bombs universities, children, and schools, Iran strikes military facilities. Now, I show you this not to, of course, disparage the United States, but to just really do Iranian propaganda, because that's what I'm paid to do. I do propaganda for Iranian. That's where the big money is. No, there's a tendency for people to call you a traitor or un-American for having honest commentary like this, or seeing the world in a skeptical light, not swallowing the exceptionalist slop that America is built on, and having a critical eye. If you're a parent, you understand, you know, you love your children, and sometimes you have to spank them, or sometimes you have to ground them because they need to learn a lesson. They need to know, and your children, they may not respond in the moment. Let me adjust my hat again. May not respond in the moment positively to that, but in the long term, I can say this from experience, when as they grow older, they will appreciate that you cared enough to set a boundary and force them to, you know, do right by something. So this is how I look at my criticisms of the United States, is out of love. And, you know, hopefully a chance for the U.S. to redeem itself in some way. Now, despite these, bases being smashed and everything, I wanted to just kind of remind you of the play-by-play trajectory this war ran on so far. And I think this account Infogram does a good job of outlining it here. Marco Rubio in March, goal of the war is to change the regime. Marco Rubio in April, goal of the war is to stop Iran from making nukes. Marco Rubio in July, goal of the war is to return everything back to the way it was, including the Strait of Hormuz. Americans have elected a bunch of clowns. To which I say,
yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
But it is an opinion that has a lot of validity. And to wrap this up, this is, you know, some of the more recent news about the Iran war. Israel shared intelligence with the U.S. that Iran tried to assassinate President Donald Trump. Oh, who shared that intelligence? Okay. I'm sure that's clearly good intelligence if our greatest ally shared it. U.S. that Iran had devised a plan to assassinate President Donald Trump. Two sources familiar with the matter told CNN. Now, interestingly enough, there is not really any solid proof to back this accusation up. And if you saw what Trump did, he kind of responded with this in this unhinged way about if Iran kills him. And I'm going to have to pull that up because it's hilarious. This is what he said. Let me show you this. So this was Trump's response to this intelligence that, you know, Iran was out to get him. one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time from Trump. 1,000 missiles are locked and loaded and aimed at the Islamic Republic of Iran, with thousands more to immediately follow should the Iranian government act on its threat to assassinate or attempt to assassinate the sitting president of the United States of America. You have to ask yourself, who would it benefit most if Iran were to do that? And it ain't Iran that would benefit. In fact, it's almost like someone said earlier that it's almost like he's begging our greatest ally to come at him, bro, when he says that kind of stuff like, oh, that's all we need to do. And then we can, shoot nukes into Iran. Okay, maybe let's, that is obviously a conspiracy theory, but it's definitely one that has some legs if you look at what's been going on lately. But there was an update on this story recently, and I want to show you that update. It took me a minute to find the news source, but here it is. U.S. officials believe that the information about Iran's alleged plot to assassinate President Donald Trump received from Israel was not entirely credible, the Wall Street Journal wrote, citing sources. So that's kind of where that whole thing ended. And you have to take anything you see with a grain of salt, which is why when I show you these reports about, what's going on in the war, I always preface it with like, this is allegedly, because I've been tricked by AI videos. Everything today is just, it's fake until proven otherwise. That's how you have to look at the world, basically. And another aspect of this that I thought was very interesting was Arachi from Iran's response to Trump. I'm going to show you that. This is massive. Trump at 6 p.m. If Iran commits to not having a nuke, we are going to make Iran economically thrive. Arachi at 7 p.m. Look how prosperous all these countries like Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq became after they trusted Israel and the United States. No one exposes Donald Trump better than Arachi. Now, I'm going to show you in just a minute a video from Explosive Media that's kind of like Iran's response to a lot of the Lindsey Graham thing. But before I show you that, I want to show you this, because this plays into it, of course, but this is the type of stuff that, Trump is obviously seeing from people close to him, like Laura Loomer here. Iranians at Khamenei's funeral in Tehran today have a giant effigy of President Trump hanging with his hands covered in blood as protesters chant death to America and kill Trump. Why are we negotiating with these animals again? Now, first and foremost, again, was that really at Khamenei's funeral? I mean, where is this video from and who filmed it? Those are my initial questions. Right out the gate, like I said, everything on the internet is false until proven otherwise. So this could be, for all I know, this is Israel's Unit 8200 people dressed as Iranians doing this, like, oh, see what they're saying, Trump? You got to bomb them more. You got to do it. But you'll notice Laura Loomer also doesn't hesitate to call the Iranians animals, which says a lot about her as a person, because I would never call people I disagree with animals. I think there's a certain kind of person you have to be to dehumanize people like that. And even then, in the case of a lot of animals like dogs, people being animals is like more valuable than being humans. So there is that. Now, I set this all up with the Laura Loomer take just to show you what Explosives Media's latest take has been on a lot of stuff. And these are the guys that do the Iranian Lego videos. But check this out. This is Explosive Media and their most recent video. It's about a minute long. Featuring Lindsey Graham. You see someone sneaking around. This dude's got a teddy bear. This is interesting. It's not like I need to worry about copyright. So I want to look at that. Look who's next on the list after Lindsey there in the Explosive Media video. That's a very interesting shot there, isn't it? What does that mean? What does KT mean? That's very interesting. And interesting take on the Iran thing and the whole recent news that Senator Lindsey Graham, who is a very big advocate for war with that country, is no longer with us. But I want to close this out with some sensibility from one of the more prominent voices in the right-wing military world, I guess, who I fundamentally I agree with him on a lot of stuff. That is Douglas McGregor, and listen to what he told Glenn Deason about what's going on in Iran right now. And let's listen.
What does war always breed? War breeds inflation. And right now, in order to cope, what are we doing? Well, we're raising interest rates. We have no choice. We really don't control them anymore. And if you look at the 10-year bond in the United States, which is very, very important, everybody, if you bring on anybody who's an expert in the bond market, whether it's somebody like Gundlach or Luke Roman or any number of people, and look at oil, inflation, and the bond market for the interest rates. Oil has already inched up to almost $80 a barrel now that the straits are shut down again. They're going to remain shut down for some period of time. I don't know how long that is. People think that we're going to be on a yo-yo. Pause this week, war next week, pause the following week, war the next week, so forth. The markets can't cope with that. And eventually, all of the efforts undertaken by the financial gurus that surround Trump, his friends and billionaires in New York City, to suppress the cost of oil by shorting oil repeatedly, exploiting all these public statements at the right point in time, that's going to fail. It's not going to work anymore. And when that does, if you look at the bond market today, the 10-year bond is up to something in the neighborhood of 4.5 or higher. Everyone I know tells me the same thing, and I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think you have to be to figure this out. When that 10-year bond rate, interest rate, hits 5%, we're through. We cannot service the debt. We cannot borrow any longer. The destruction of credit, which is inevitable at that point, is going to bring everybody in the West down. And that's where we're headed right now. A lot of people, including me, I thought Trump understood the danger, which is why I thought he made an intelligent statement when he signed the MOU. Everybody knows that that MOU is anathema to Donald Trump and his administration and to everybody in Washington. It's essentially an admission that we are not the hegemonic power. That's your point. We've surrendered. Everybody's like, oh, it's a surrender document. Well, what we've said is we're not the hegemon anymore. And that's perfectly fine with me and most Americans, because we don't want to spend the money on that nonsense. It's unnecessary. We don't have to be the hegemon. We have to defend ourselves and our true interests.
There it is. I'm going to stop there because I think that is the point. That was the reason Donald Trump was elected, because people believe what Murray Murray. That's not Douglas Murray. McGregor.
You're an anti-Semite.
That's Douglas Murray. Douglas McGregor just said that's the point right there, is Trump betrayed that. That was why people elected him. And we knew, like, this, another foreign war of this scale, like he said, the risks here are like civilizational, because the economy could collapse based on what he's saying there. And then what happens? Then what happens when what happens when Wall Street and all the fake money and crypto shit is just meaningless, and all the zeros in your bank account have zero, there's no cash behind them. That's why a lot of people are investing in gold. But is there really gold? How much of that is fake? So this is an existential thing, and Americans are just kind of sleepwalking through it, and it sucks, but it's intentional. And also we've been kind of forced into our grind trying to make money. I mean, I know for myself, even I'm struggling to like pay for everything and, keep the lights on and all that stuff. So I'm sure the rest of you are going through similar stuff. It's tough out there. I don't know anyone, even people that are doing well are struggling, unless you're close to the administration. You got some inside information you could trade in on Kalshi. You're not really doing too well. So I had 3 or 4 more segments scheduled for today, but I don't have time to do them all. So we're going to close with the one that I think is probably the most important. And that is this guy, Clavicular. Do you know who Clavicular is? Now, this guy is popular for what's called looks maxing, which is where you like break your jaw to like make it square, more square, whatever. And it's kind of hey, listen, I'm one of those people who, it's much like with the trans thing. If you're 18 plus, it's your body, your choice, right? You should be able to sculpt and do whatever you want to yourself, to your own body, once you're of an adult age. When you're developing as a child, I think there is moral value in prohibiting, tattooing children, for example, also because you're going to grow, so it's going to stretch out. So it's no point getting a tattoo when you're a kid. But it's the same thing with getting a sex change when you're a kid. Like, let's just wait till the kid goes through puberty, and then we can talk, and then if they want it, they can get it, So I put him in that kind of category, right? But he's also kind of a douchebag. And so with the whole looks maxing thing, comes this new addition to our lexicon of maxing. So you can just say a word and put maxing on the end of it. And that's why I came up with TARDMAXXING. And that's what I call a lot of what political parties are doing in today's world. And we're going to show you a distinct example of TARDMAXXING at the end of this piece. But I want to start by showing you, who this Clavicular guy is, for those of you who don't know, because some of you might not even care or pay attention to any of this stuff. And I respect you for that, because it's very stupid. I happen to see it in my feed, but I think if I'm seeing it in my feed, you most likely are too. And as we're going to find out, there's a good reason for that. Now, it's kind of funny to see the Clav pipeline ended up with him partying in the country of our greatest allies after getting a nose job and basically doing promotion for the IOF in the country of our greatest ally. Clavicular made a boss call after finding out his Israeli girlfriend had the login to the official TikTok account. Interesting. So this is kind of what the kids are into, for all my older viewers out there, which I'm sure a lot of you are. Now, when someone like this kind of breaks through, you have to wonder, of course, how were they so easily able to do this? It's very clear that the algorithm is kind of the new gatekeeper. These algorithms are shaped to go, okay, well, we're going to elevate, Google, TikTok, Twitter, even Instagram. The algorithm is built to elevate certain people. And I think, listen, let's be honest, a lot of it's based on money. I used to do marketing on Facebook. I can tell you with a surety that if you want to be seen on Facebook, you have to pay, because your people's feeds are already filled with paid ads. So your non-paid ad is obscured. It's almost invisible if you're like trying to promote something or whatever. You almost have to pay. So money is a big part of it, but there's another part of it as well. And that is, I want to show you this here, because this is the realization that I had with this guy. Because I have no interest in any of this. I'm like, how is this guy even on my radar? I said again, no one would even know about this weenie if he wasn't a Zio dick sucker. So this guy in Red Pill Media is like, Clavicular is literally streaming in Israel and partying with the IDF soldier. He can club with girls anywhere in the world, but he chose our greatest ally so he could normalize Zionism and terrorism to American youth. Clavicular is a traitor and deserves to be deported. Now, I wouldn't go that extreme. I don't think he deserves to be reported. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I don't think it's even possible if you were born in the United States constitutionally. But it does bring up the point that I made, which is no one would know who this guy was if he didn't have these types of viewpoints. And that is true for so many people. I woke up this morning reading a thing about Dana Bash from CNN. I'm sure you know her maiden name is Dana Schwartz. To be fair to her, it's not like she changed her name to like be in entertainment. She married a guy named Jeremy Bash, who used to be in the CIA. Now she's divorced from him, but she still has his name. So, but the point again is, back to the gatekeeping thing we were discussing earlier, people are allowed into the, corporate newsroom or the algorithm because they hold certain viewpoints. And when someone like Graham Platner breaks through into that arena unwelcome by, these gatekeepers, he instantly gets, slimed with accusations of something bad and forced out. And a lot of people buy it, which is not smart, but what are you going to do? That's life. Politics is the art of manipulation in a lot of ways. And hey, those that are better at it win elections. Let's be honest. Now, Jake Shields here, noted anti-Semite. Jake Shields. I asked Douglas Murray what he thought about Jake Shields.
You're an anti-Semite.
Really, Douglas? Me? I just asked you who Jake Shields was, and that's what you're going to say?
You're an anti-Semite.
Yes, thank you, Douglas. Yeah, we always got to thank Douglas for his absolutely brilliant political commentary. Every time his answer is, "Hey, Douglas, what do you think about the conflict in Ukraine?"
You're an anti-Semite.
Thank you, Douglas. Again, it says Keith Olbermann. It's been a while since we've heard from Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann, what do you think about the conflict in Ukraine?
I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
Thank you, Keith. Both Keith and our good friend Douglas Murray are welcome guests on the same page. Let's be honest, in today's political ecosystem, Keith Olbermann and Douglas Murray are like the same person. In today, isn't that crazy? I'm kidding, of course. On some level, though, there is some kernels of truth in that statement that I just made, even though it's a joke. Jake Shields here says, later today, he will grape a prisoner before bombing a school. You're not going to want to miss today's stream, because Clavicular says he was hanging out with a soldier, but emphasizes there's nothing political about his trip.
It's going to be political, but the women in Tel Aviv are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, like...
Yeah, I mean, for you, that's like, it makes sense, yeah.
Bro, I was kicking it with this girl who was a soldier in the IDF.
So again, I have coined this TARDMAXXING. So I just want to make sure you guys know, you heard it here first. TARDMAXXING is what these guys are doing, and a lot of people. So if you see that out on the streets, you see that term, just remember Dustin Rogrimes. That was his contribution to the lexicon. TARDMAXXING. Much like Candace Owens gave us Fed slop, I'm giving y'all TARDMAXXING. But let's keep going here. This is your boy Clavicular talking about his the inception of TARDMAXXING. You essentially advocating with a 20-year-old to share his political opinions to the massive audience I have is wildly irresponsible. I'm very conscious of the influence I have, which is why I only speak about topics such as looksmaxing, aka TARDMAXXIng, which I spent years of my life researching. More influencers need to humble themselves and realize they are ignorant politically generally just effing stupid. Now, let's be honest here. This is much like what Neera Tanden was doing, like feigning concern over like kind of celebrating. This is kind of what he's doing here. He's just like, I'm not even about politics, you guys. Oh my God. I'm about TARDMAXXING. I'm not even about our greatest ally. I just came here because they gave me a ton of money to like help legitimize what they're doing right now and like among the youth and make them look more benign and less like they're actually dying. Like I'm not even political, you guys. Oh my God.
At 22:16 hours.
You're an anti-Semite.
This is my Cash Patel Cash Bandicoot clip there, which I haven't played in a while. That's because, you know
nothing about nothing. You're fake news.
So I want to close this out by also showing you reporter in chief here. You know, of course, what Clavicular here is responding to is Olivia Reingold, who works for Barry Weiss, the head of CBS. And what Olivia Reingold is saying here is an extremely egalitarian turn. Egalitarian turn. Great. Clavicular has revealed himself to be an equal opportunity partner. The man is in Israel to party, y'all. That's it. You guys, I'm like not even political. I'm totally so not political. I just came here to like TARDMAX, because that's what I do. I like TARDMAXing because, we got to max the TARD in today's day and age. Now, to close out here, I want to show you a political, very distinct political example of TARDMAXing. And this is the claim that Hitler was a socialist. Now, this is a claim that, a lot of people make because Hitler and the Nazis called themselves the National Socialist Workers Party or something like that, because they had to appeal to the working class. So in order to do that, they called themselves socialist. However, they did not do anything socialist. It would be like me calling myself the Pope and then going out and banging hookers and doing a bag of cocaine. I'm not the Pope. Even though I claimed I am, you could say, well, he said he was the Pope. That's Hitler claiming he's a socialist. Because let's read this. This is Mike Lee, who is actually a registered politician who doesn't know anything about history, clearly. Hitler was a socialist, a national one. No, Hitler was an authoritarian fascist, my friend. And I think I responded to this, and of course it didn't get very many views because, nothing I post on Twitter does, even though I fucking pay for it. When reality conflicts with your worldview, words have meanings, and Hitler was not a socialist. He may have said he was, but we have documented evidence of his authoritarian actions. If I tell you I'm the Messiah, you'd be forced to call me your God by your own logic here. That's why I said, I can call myself the Pope, but the actions and the reality have to back up the claim. And in the case of the Nazis calling themselves socialists, those two things do not connect, because the Nazis put socialists and communists in jail and did authoritarian things. That's who the Nazis were. So I just wanted to make sure people know that, just because you call yourself something doesn't mean that's what you actually are. Looking at you, Zelensky. So I had a couple more pieces to do today, but I've already been on for almost 2.5 hours, and that's long enough. I do need to maybe consider jumping back on and doing additional streams at some point, which I will. But I do want to kind of just show you one more quick thing before we go. Just kind of a note of joy for me. Oh, dang it. Wow. This post violated the rules. Never mind. I was going to show you these. Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. This is YRB Jake Lang claiming he was brutally assaulted at an Antifa rally because he's out here waving the Mamdani as a communist flag. And I just thought this was funny because the original post that I had was like something about him getting rocked, but this is his viewpoint, but it's kind of the same video. And he goes to these kind of events and starts problems and gets this on tape so he can go, oh, the left is just violent. You know, his guys are taking swings at people too. He has a dude with him that's swinging on people. So he creates these kind of, you know, events, and this would have been my weekend propaganda bit, but I got to get out of here. So I'm going to take you out today with maybe one more interesting note. This is one more thing. See, I just can't quit. I can't stop. This is Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. Let me remove and re-add this just to make sure you guys can see it. Mick Jagger says fans don't want political lectures at concerts after Bruce Springsteen's anti-Trump speeches. Mick Jagger's the king. He is correct. This guy says, okay, this is what I wanted to show you, because first of all, one of the things I love about Mick Jagger is if you look at I'm just going to rant on this before we go today, but if you look at the bands that are currently touring, right? Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, Guns N' Roses, the vocalists are terrible. And listen, I don't expect Axl Rose to hit the notes he hit in 1983 or 89 or whatever that he's in 2026. He's an old man now. But at least Mick Jagger is one of those dudes who takes time. Like he has a personal trainer and a nutritionist, and like focus, because your voice is a natural instrument. So you have to take care of your health to have a good voice in your 70s. And Mick Jagger does that. So kudos to Mick. That's why I said Mick is the king, but I wanted you to see this before we go. This is my funny note to end you off on. This guy says, let me enlarge this for you so you can read along. This guy says, I don't ever want a political lecture from a musician. I don't care where it occurs. And I said, right, put it in your fucking song and make it artsy and symbolic. I didn't come to your show to hear Rachel Maddow or Mark Levin run their cult bitch mouth. And I'm just going to give myself a round of applause for that. Because Mick Jagger here is on point. Fans don't want political lectures at concerts. Like, not everything has to be political. But again, if you're Roger Waters, it's kind of like, listen, thread it together with the nature of the music. I just don't want to stop to hear you lecture me for 30 minutes about who I need to vote for or that kind of stuff. Make your statement in your song. And Roger Waters does that very well. So thank you all for sitting with me today and sticking with me on my pedestal. Like I said earlier, I love and value each and every one of you. And if I get something wrong or, you know, my hat's on crooked or whatever, please chime in the comments and hit me up and tell me what that is. I'm going to continue to do this weekly and grow my audience. And I thank you for being here with me every Sunday. We will be back again next Sunday at around 2:30 p.m. Well, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, actually. But we will be here once again next Sunday for another edition of The Week in Politics. You know, I left out today pieces on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and also the NATO summit that recently happened. But you can go to the Durin and other sources and get good stuff on that. I try to stick as closely as I can to American politics as possible, but global politics are American politics too, especially since the United States is such a large player on the world stage and a large disturbance on the world stage. Let's be honest. So I'm going to take you out of here today with what should we do today? Let's do something something funny that we haven't shown in a long time. Let me see what I got for you. Right up here. We got let's do it. Let's do this Tony Hinchcliffe clip. Man, I don't want to show other people's comedy, but this is just like one joke, I think. You know what? Never mind. I'm going to show you as we go out today. My democracy under attack. Voters are a threat video. I think that's a good one, considering what's going on right now with Graham Platner and communists, the scare tactics that are getting used. This is one of my favorite MSNBC bits of all time about how voters are a threat to democracy, and I turned it into a song just for you. So I'm going to take you out today with "Voters Are a Threat to Democracy," one of my original tracks. So hopefully there's no copyright shit behind this. But thank you again, one and all, for sticking with me today and on my soapbox. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe. And we'll see you soon. Take good care of yourselves.
Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? Voters, a threat to democracy. 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 White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. The threat to American democracy. Voters, a threat to 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 democracy. White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? Voters, a threat to democracy. 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 White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. The threat to American democracy.